Mickey, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. We can go ahead and get started.
Guys, if you have questions for Mickey, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll call on you. Okay, first question's from Doug Mouton.
Yeah, hey, Mickey. Are you okay with how the Mike Thomas timetable played out with him waiting until June to have the surgery?
Yeah, well, look, I'm not going to talk a lot about that other than to say, I'll say a couple things on it, and then I don't think we'll say anything more on it. The first is, look, Mike had the injury. We all know about that, the high ankle sprain. He was treated conservatively during the season. He came back. He played in the last two postseason games. Still had a few issues after the season. Look, it was decided that he was going to treat that conservatively, and I think we all had an expectation that would heal and he'd be fine coming into camp this year. But we get to the mini camp and obviously it wasn't quite right, and so we had to make a call and collectively made the call to have the surgery in June. Look, obviously, if we, with hindsight, we would have preferred that surgery to be earlier in February or March, but it wasn't. It is what it is, and hopefully he's had a good result so far, and hopefully we'll get him back sooner rather than later.
Nick Underhill.
Mickey, do you guys have any clarity on Marshawn Lattimore's availability? Following the offseason incident, some people, speculated that he might get suspended. Have you guys heard anything on that front?
No, no, we haven't.
Rod Walker.
I was muted. I'm sorry. With the COVID protocols, do you think that'll have any effect on roster spots and, with players that have or have not been vaccinated?
Yeah, no, listen, I think this, the protocols that are in place, really, there's a difference between the vaccinated, the unvaccinated. We're lucky enough to have a real high percentage of vaccinated players, and, at least within the building, we can operate, relatively normal. There are some protocols relative to that apply to the unvaccinated players. We have a few of those, but look, we've got a number of guys that are in the process of being vaccinated, and so I expect those effects to, at least within the building and during training camp, to be relatively, relatively easy to handle.
Catherine Terrell.
Sorry, I was muted. I was actually going to ask you this before you said that, but do you have an estimate of what percentage of vaccinated you guys are at players wise? And do you have any hope that you can get to?
Yeah, well, look, if I'm going to count the guys that are in process, we're going to be well over 90%, which is a real good number for us, for anyone really. Hopefully we'll get to 100% at some point.
Ed Daniels.
Mickey, does it concern you that knowing the severity of the situation, that some guys would still choose not to be vaccinated? Does that make you kind of pause a little bit, that you actually have to ask for that?
Well, look, I just think it's a reflection of society in general. There are people that are choosing not to be vaccinated. I wish that everyone would get vaccinated. I've been vaccinated. All of our staff have been vaccinated. So that would be my preference. And yet, look, it's a free country, and guys are free to make their own decisions, and, deal with the consequences and the rules as they sit within, in terms of the NFL. In terms of our guys, they've got some protocols that unvaccinated guys have to deal with. And so if they're willing to deal with those, that's their choice. But obviously, for me, and I believe in the vaccinations. I think we should all get them, and I think it's for the greater good.
Luke Johnson.
Mickey, how important was it for you guys to get that extension done with Ryan? Not only to lock that up just for the long term, but to kind of give you guys a little bit more flexibility right now.
Yeah, I think, listen, anytime we can get, a player extended, someone that's contributed as much as Ryan has, he earned the extension. Obviously, we've got a few other guys that we'd like to, do that with as well. And we haven't made as much progress, but it's just one at a time. I'm glad to have that done and excited for him. Excited for him and the organization to have him under contract for a number of years.
Then the second part of that, Mickey, just with giving you guys some flexibility to maybe add even more to this year's roster as it stands right now.
Yeah, look, anytime we can, help our cap situation, particularly this year with the reduction and with the results of last year, and really some uncertainty as to where the cap's going to be, going forward. Obviously, that's it gives us a little bit of flexibility. Yes, but.
Mike Hoss.
Yeah, Mickey, I'm just curious, from 4 preseason games to 3, philosophically, do you look at the attack differently? We in 4 games, we knew starters in game 1, maybe first half, game 2, game 3, and then game 4, maybe no starters at all, or as much as you couldn't. How does that change now with 3 games?
Yeah, well, look, we had no games last year, so it's significantly different than a year ago. I didn't like last year, that's for sure. I didn't like not having preseason games. But, those are questions, Sean, I think more for Sean in terms of how he schedules the play time. And I don't know that he's made a final decision on that, but look, there'll be plenty of snaps available to both get our guys evaluated and prepared.
John DeShazer.
Hi, Mickey. How do you guys feel depth-wise along the defensive line? Obviously, a couple of names that people aren't familiar with, but how do you feel going into camp?
Yeah, look, I think we feel, pretty good. Obviously, the one thing, you never feel comfortable. You always think you can add, and you always think that hey, we can get better if we just add this piece or that piece. But in general, I think we feel good about those guys up front. Obviously, David missing some games puts a little bit of a twist on that plan, but look, we've got a lot of talented guys in that front 7 and in the front 4 particular, and I think we'll be just fine.
Mike Triplett.
Mickey, I have a 2-part question. The first part is, how long have you known that that you expected Michael Thomas would miss time, and how has that influenced whether or not you're going to bring in any veteran receivers?
Well, look, obviously, when he had that surgery, that was determined in June, and so we've known since then that the conservative treatment didn't work, and that we had to do surgery. So we've had a little time.
Well, I mean, that hasn't. So I guess the fact that you haven't brought in a lot of receiving help since then, does that signal that you're comfortable with the depth you have, or are you looking to add at that position?
Yeah, look, I think we like our group of receivers probably more than some of the media guys do, but yeah, we'll adjust accordingly.
Well, and then the second part I was going to ask, defensive tackle, as John just asked, and receiver and even cornerback. I know you just added Brian Poole. What timetable makes sense for adding veteran players? Are we going to see more of that with your team and the league? Have you purposely been waiting till you guys are back at training camp, or have we pretty much seen all we're going to see unless a particular player comes available?
Well, I think, look, free agency happened a number of months ago, and so, how do you add players? You add players by obviously there's a few that are unsigned, but primarily it's teams that are going to release guys, or if there's a trade option that comes along. And so we'll continue to explore everything to help our team regardless of position. And if something comes along that makes sense for us, then I think we've got a history of pulling the trigger on that. So I don't have a definitive timetable for you that we are or aren't going to add someone, but we're always looking.
Jeff Duncan.
Hey, Mickey, one more Mike Thomas question. Do you have a timetable? I mean, do you know or have any expectation for him playing wise season?
Well, we've had some discussions that, I'd rather not share. But yeah, I think we have a pretty good sense of what the timetable would ordinarily be, and we'll act accordingly.
And another question, a little more philosophical, big picture. I wanted to get your thoughts on communication from management, yourself, Sean Payton, to the roster, to the players. You all have managed to avoid a lot of the things we're seeing around the league, where it seems like there are some communication breakdowns. And I know you're not going to comment on other teams, but can you speak to your philosophy, what you've learned over the years, and how important that is to be on the same page with the roster and with the front office?
Yeah, I think, look, first of all, I think we have a head coach who does a great job communicating to our team. It's been a little more challenging this year and last year because of the protocols and the lack of off season in some cases. That's been more challenging, and yet I think our coaching staff in particular has done a great job of having an open communication lines. Look, we always try to do that in the front office with guys that we're discussing contracts with, and any other issues that come up. So look, we try to be transparent. We try to tell the guys and be honest as we can about what's happening, even if we don't know the answers. I think just being straightforward and being forthright is really the key to it.
Thank you.
Nick Underhill.
Mickey, you guys have been in that quarterback development business for quite a few years now. Just what are some of the traits you look for when you guys are trying to figure out who to work with? And specifically with veterans, is there anything that you guys feel like you can't fix as far as some of those traits? Is there any traits you feel like aren't fixable with quarterbacks?
Nick, I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out, so I heard about a third of that question.
Let me try again. Can you hear me all right?
You're kind of in and out. What are you, under a power pole or something?
Mickey, I can try to answer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can try to repeat what he said. He said, when you're in the quarterback development business, do you feel, I only heard part of his question, but the traits that you look for in a quarterback, can they be varied? And do you feel like you can sort of fix and work with a lot of different traits and different types of quarterbacks?
Yeah, look, first of all, I think that's a better question for Sean, but one thing that our staff and our head coach in particular has done a great job of is being able to assess what a player does well and then adapting what they ask him to do to his skill set. And so I wouldn't want to put that in one box and say you have to have, A, B, or C. You might have, different traits that different guys have, and Sean and his staff will adjust accordingly. I think they've been fantastic doing that over the years. Now we've had the same quarterback for 15 years, so they haven't had to do that at that position, and yet we have had over the last 2 years, 8 games that Drew missed, and the next guy plugged in, and obviously the game was called a little differently, and the plays that were in the game plan were adjusted accordingly. So again, I think that is more a talent of our staff to be able to adjust to the skill set that the players that we have fit.
And there was just one more part to that, if you can hear me. Just, are there any traits when you're looking at these guys that you feel like if a quarterback does this, it can't be fixed? Are there any fatal flaws that exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us, a lot of that is intangible issues. Look, we're looking for leadership and high character and coachability and the things that are probably more on the less measurable side in terms of what we're looking for in players. And look, that's across the board. It's not necessarily just quarterbacks.
Larry Holder.
Mickey, with so much roster turnover, a lot of the focus is in, all right, well, the losses, but obviously they're going to have new players or fresher faces playing in certain spots this year. I mean, how curious are you to see that pan out? Because we haven't probably seen this much roster turnover in such a while with this team.
Well, look, first of all, I do believe we have a pretty strong core group of returning players that have performed at a high level. And obviously, we expect and assume that they're going to continue to do that. But we've also got what I think is a really strong group of younger players that are ascending. And obviously there's some guys that second year players and third year players that you would expect to improve. And look, we're anxious to see as we get into training camp how that manifests itself.
Johnson.
Hey, Mickey, I'm just curious if you guys are having any more contract talks between some of the guys who need extensions, or if that's kind of put to bed now that the season's about to start.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not really going to answer that specifically, other than to say that I've never been a believer that you cut things off at a certain date. I think look, anytime we can get a contract extended, and I'm not one of these guys that say, hey, once the season starts, we don't want to have any more discussions. I think you can get a contract extension done at any time if it makes sense for both parties. Then you do it.
Amy Just.
Other than Michael Thomas and Derek Kelly, are there any other players who won't be ready to go tomorrow?
Yeah, we've got a couple guys, Will Lutz and PJ Williams. They'll be on NFI. It's soft tissue stuff that'll resolve in a few days. So I think all three of those guys, Derek Kelly, Will, and PJ, will all be pretty quick turnarounds.
Mike Triplett.
Mickey, I know this is probably more of a Sean question, but Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston in particular strike me as uniquely skilled quarterbacks. How do you have a quarterback competition between them? Do you want to see them sort of on an equal playing field, or do you want to see like here's what it'd look like if we designed our team around Taysom, and here's what it'd look like if we designed our team around Jameis?
Yeah, it's a big question, and you're right. That's a better question for Sean. I think at the end of the day, though, you're really looking at just the end result, the production, and is the team moving? Are we moving the football? Are we scoring? All those kinds of things, and there's more to it than that, obviously. But this is a results-oriented business, and that's true for all of us, for every position, every player position, every coaching position, every front office position. It's a results-oriented business. So we'll look at the results throughout training camp, and Sean and his staff will make a decision.
And we ask Sean about this all the time, but just in general, what's your impression of Jameis?
Currently underway.
What's your impression of Jameis in the year and a half that you've gotten to know him? The first number 1 overall pick I think you've ever had.
Yeah, I've said this. I think we've all been impressed. You have this impression of someone, but until you get them in the building and you're around them, it's just an impression. And I think everyone has been really impressed with Jameis and how he's handled himself and his dedication to his craft. And look, I think we've got a number of guys there in that room that of that type of character. And so it'll be exciting to see see those guys perform during this training camp.
Last one's from Doug Mouton.
Hey, Mickey, do you still have an expectation for fans at training camp practices and for fans in the Superdome, in full numbers when the preseason starts?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, for training camp, we've got, I think 7, 8, 9 practices that are open to the public, and I expect, and I would assume they'll be well attended. We have, protocols that we have in place don't allow much contact between our staff and those fans, but they can come out and watch. And look, I hope they do. I hope they turn out like they would in any year. And I think we always practice better when it's in front of the fans. Look, currently we expect full houses at the stadium. That That's important for the New Orleans Saints. It's important for our home games to have, the crowds that we've had over the years. They're loud, they affect the game. And, we're all looking forward to a full dome. And so, that's our expectation.
Okay, last one's from Nick Underhill.
Mickey, will you guys need to look at kickers with Lutz being out for a little bit of time?
Yeah, I don't expect that. This is just, it's a short-term deal. So I wouldn't expect that. No.
Okay, we're all set. Thank you, Mickey.
Thanks, Mickey.
All right. Thank you, guys.
See you in February.
All right.